How's it going, and welcome back to another video. So ever since Sony announced the 18-135, there have been rumors and whispers about it becoming the new kit lens for the a6000 series cameras. There's been nothing official about this at all, but there's been lots of speculation. So is it a worthy successor to the previous and absolutely terrible 16-50mm? So out of all the lenses I've reviewed and tested, this is probably my least favorite. It is incredibly soft, it's got tons of chromatic aberration, it's got lots of distortion, and in general just is a disappointing lens. I have not been happy with this. It's very slow at f3.5 to 5.6 at 50mm. I just really don't like this lens. Never have, probably never will. There's lots of people out there that are perfectly happy with this lens, but there are some people that I've seen in the comments say, I got this a6000, came with the kit lens, and I almost left Sony because it was so bad. They since found better lenses or jumped ship altogether and are happy with where they're at right now. But that's pretty huge that a kit lens can turn people off that much. So could replacing the 16-50 with the 18-135 redeem Sony in a certain regard? I think probably. I shot these two lenses head to head in several different situations, and I like this lens better across the board. But what I like and dislike doesn't really matter. What matters is how these lenses perform head to head. And before we jump into the actual image comparisons, there are a few physical differences that I want to point out about these lenses. First thing I want to look at is the size. These lenses are wildly different in size. You can see that you could probably stack 2.5 of the kit lenses on top of one another to get one of the 18-35s. The 18-135 extends when you zoom in and out, which makes it about 3.5 times as big as the kit lens when the kit lens is collapsed. Now the kit lens does extend out when you power it on, but that still doesn't quite make up the difference. As you can see, this is still pushing twice as long. Another thing that's different about the two of them is that this one is a power zoom lens. So you can push this little toggle switch back and forth and it'll zoom in and out. And it takes about 3.5 seconds to zoom completely in or completely out from 16 to 50mm. Meanwhile, the 18-135 is mechanical zoom, so it takes less than a second to go from 18 to 135. So you've got very precise, very intentional control. You feel very connected with this lens. The thing about the kit lens is that you can also turn the focus ring here to zoom in and out, which can easily take you from 16mm to 50mm in less than a second. So while you've got the speed of zooming in and out here with this wheel, you kind of lack the control and the precision that you still have with the mechanical zoom. This wheel is always controlling the zoom unless you change it to manual focus within the camera, and then that becomes your focus control. And then once you're in manual focus, you have to use the toggle switch to zoom in and out. Now the 18-135 has got two dedicated rings, one for zooming and one for focus. It's also got a switch on the side to switch into manual focus without having to access any menus within the camera. The 18-135 is definitely more feature-filled and zooms in over twice as much as the 16-50. So let's see how that translates to real-world photos. Alright, so right off the bat, we're going to look at some of these sharpness comparisons here. Now, I started off with these wide open and the widest focal length that they had. This one is 16mm, and the 18-135 is obviously 18mm. So at f3.5, which is their fastest aperture on both lenses, let's jump into the center and see how they look. And as you can see, the 18-135 is significantly sharper than the 16-50 in the center. Let's go check out the corners. The corners are absolute garbage on the 16-50. Pretty bad on the 18-135 though, but better than the 16-50. Moving on down to f5.6, the centers are a little closer, but the 18-135 sharpens up a good bit, so it stays a good bit ahead of the 16-50. Going up into the corners here, we can see that there's almost zero corner improvement with the 16-50, coming from 3.5 to 5.6, and there's a slight improvement with the 18-135, but not very much. Both of them still look pretty rough. Moving down to f11, we can see that both of them are decently sharp. I don't think the 18-135 gained too much with that jump, but I think the 16-50 may have finally caught up. Checking out the corners show zero improvement on the 16-50, mild improvement on the 18-135, but in general, it's not very good. Okay, moving on to 50mm. One of the things I noticed about this picture when I couldn't figure out why they didn't look the same was the distortion and how it's corrected. So look at this triangle here that's created in this negative space. It's almost identical on this side of the frame. But then look at this center column here. It's almost perfectly straight up and down in this picture, and it looks like it's tilting way back in this picture. There's something about the distortion of this lens here that's giving it more of a surreal, wider angle look to it that I can't quite put my finger on. But let's take a look at the sharpness. This is wide open on both lenses, so I didn't stop anything down. This is f5 on the 18-135 and f5.6 on the 16-50. Zooming into the very center here, we can see some significant haziness around this contrasty point right here. We're just lacking in sharpness in general. Let's take a look a little bit more center, and we seem to have the same problem. And that's not even the bad part, because when we move further over to the edge of the picture here, look at the difference on this line right here. Look at how fuzzy that is on the 16-50 and how sharp it is on the 18-135. And it just gets worse and worse as we get further and further away from the center. It starts getting worse on the 18-135 as well. We're seeing significant image quality loss out here towards the edge. Jumping down to f11, stuff has improved significantly on the 16-50. As you can see, they look quite similar now here in the center. And then off to the edges here, it's still very fuzzy. It's very fuzzy on the 16-50, better on the 18-135. And moving back into the background here, we can see it just gets worse and worse on the 16-50, and it stays reasonably sharp on the 18-135. Now for a quick focal length comparison, this is what you get at 135 versus 50 millimeters on the same building. We're looking right down here in this bottom corner here, and this is what we're looking at as far as actual magnification changes go. So there's a huge difference in focal length here, so let's see how that translates to real world photos. Both of these photos were shot zoomed in as far as I could go from where I was standing, and you can see that one picture really stands out, looks like an actual picture, the other one just looks like an accidental snapshot. And that's really the biggest difference that you're going to have when shooting with these two different lenses. Being able to go all the way to 135 millimeters, being able to zoom in all the way to 135 millimeters really helps with the subject isolation and taking nice looking pictures. But just for kicks, let's take a quick look at the image quality. And it's abysmal, absolutely abysmal on the 16-50. This is the second copy of this lens that I've had, so it's not the lens. I bought two of these lenses just to make sure I had a decent one. Both of them were terrible. And then we've got the background again. The bokeh is not particularly good on the 18-135, as we can see here. It's got that soap bubble ring to it, but it's a lot better than whatever is achievable with the 16-50. Alright, here we go. Both of these wide open, both of these at 50 millimeters, and in this picture there's quite a huge difference in image quality. Look at all the details that you lose on the clock that are apparent in the 18-135, and these are at nearly identical focal lengths, and we could zoom in even further on the 18-135, but the 16-50 is absolutely struggling. And another one for photo sharpness. Here's an example of how much quality you're losing with the 16-50. It's just so bad. It looks so much better on the 18-135 that it's pretty remarkable. I can't even believe how big of a difference there is. And here's a good one-to-one example of the bokeh here. It's very unintentional. It seems like the bokeh was an accident. Whatever happened with this lens. The 18-135, it looks like they at least made it nice and consistent. The maximum macro is very similar between these two lenses. You can get a little bit closer with the 16-50, but you lose out on the focal length advantage. The 18-135 is a little bit further away, but you are shooting at 135 millimeters. So you get a very similar macro shot, and this is a good example of the difference in magnification that you get. One more for focal length difference and background separation is this shot right here. You can see that you can isolate the subject. You can really tell what I was trying to shoot, and in the 16-50, it just looks like a random snapshot. The image quality again is abysmal on the 16-50. It's significantly better on the 18-135, and for background separation, this here is a good example of the huge difference that you get between the two. This one is completely blown out. This one here, it just looks bad. It doesn't even look, it just looks bad. Well, The 18-135 seemed to kick the 16-50's butt so hard that it didn't even seem like a fair comparison. There wasn't a single image where the 16-50 came out on top in any regard whatsoever, and the 18-135 has got a significant zoom range advantage over the 16-50. Some of those focal length comparisons may not seem fair, and technically they're not because this one does go to 135 millimeters, but that's one of the things to compare when you're comparing two lenses, is what are the kind of pictures you can get with each one of them. And I think that the images I had demonstrated the differences between them pretty well. I think that the 18-135 would be a good upgrade even right now if you've got the 16-50 and you're looking for something better, more versatile. This lens is going to do that. It gives you more zoom range, better image quality. This would in fact be a good upgrade from the 16-50. It's a little pricey for what it is because it is almost $600, but it does a pretty good job, especially relative to what you may be replacing. If Sony decides to switch things up and make this their new standard kit lens, that would be a fantastic move. I've got nothing but garbage out of this lens every single time I've used it. As I said earlier, I've had 2 copies of it so far, trying to see if I ended up with a bad copy the first time. Maybe I got a bad copy the second time too, but both of them were terrible. So hopefully this video answers any questions that you guys had regarding these 2 lenses and a potential upgrade path from the kit lens and potential future default kit lenses. So if you like this video, go ahead and give it a like. Hit that subscribe button if you want to see more of my videos. Check me out on Instagram if you want to see some behind the scenes and more Sony related camera stuff. And we'll see you in the next one.